So what is the Italian Tuneup or the Turin Tuneup? We've spoken about it in a few of our other videos. A lot of people have mentioned this in the comments and they swear by it. But where's the term come from? Is it helpful? And the question that I was asked as well on one of our previous videos is how often should you explore the full RPM range? So we're going to dissect this as a topic. We're going to look at where the term comes from, the history of it, how it can benefit a modern engine, and how much more benefit you got on some of those older engines from this method of tuning up the engine. So the basic idea of the Italian Tuneup is high RPM driving for a prolonged period of time or over a distance. And the idea of that is to break up the carbon deposits inside the engine, to clear out all of the tubes and just blow all the junk out of the exhaust. So it originated back in the days where you had a carbureted engine. So things were much more crude back then. The spark plugs were made of the very exotic material copper, and you tended to need to replace those every year. They got fouled up with carbon. We used to have to take the spark plugs out regularly, brush the carbon off and re-gap them to set the distance so you can adjust the size of the spark. You had special feeler gauges that would help you to determine the optimum gap size, and that would be a regular part of maintenance. So the Turin Tuneup actually gave the car an opportunity to get enough heat in to burn off a lot of these carbon deposits. Now, in the modern engine, things are different, and a modern engine is essentially a lab designed to make the burn of the fuel as efficient and as clean as possible. It's analysing every aspect of the combustion process in order to fully extract as much power as it can. And modern spark plugs are made of much more exotic materials like iridium. The electrodes are much finer, they last much longer. Some of the manufacture intervals on plugs are now at 50,000 miles. They're quite expensive, but they don't tend to foul up like those early ones. So are the benefits to doing an Italian tune-up on a modern engine? And how often should we be redlining our engine? Please boot that like button, that really does help us to get out there. So modern cars still have carbon building up on them. So in direct injection engines, it tends to build up on the intake. So there's not a lot you can do to that by driving it quickly. The only benefit really is that you're getting more fuel through the engine, there's higher velocities flowing through the exhaust, and the increased fuel that you're using may help to clean the injectors, especially if you've got a high quality fuel. That's a fuel that has got additives specifically designed to clean the injectors. Now, fuel from different places has different additive packages within it, so you will probably find that one fuel suits your car much better, and you notice a bit of a difference when you use that. We won't even get into the topic of high octane fuel here. We're just purely looking at the additive package within the fuel. So more fuel going through the injectors, a higher flow rate, a higher velocity will aid this cleaning effort on the injectors. And if those injectors are clean, that's going to mean the burn is more efficient, you're getting better fuel economy, and there's less potential for carbon to get back into the intake and build up. There are bits of carbon building up inside the engine itself. That's just a byproduct of the combustion process. And again, the high RPM driving, the higher heat, the greater velocity of the pistons, and the increased airflow will go some way to removing that carbon and chucking it out. That's certainly not a major consideration for a modern engine. They do a pretty good job of managing everything to just minimize that carbon buildup inside the engine in the first place. You will notice though that if a car has been driven very, very gently, things tend to clog up. Turbocharged engines, for example, engines that have particulate filters, and you need to get the velocity, the pressure going through them, the temperature needs to get into those filters in order to burn off the soot particles that have been collected. And catalysts as well. These are all exhaust systems that have been designed to reduce the pollution that comes out of the engine. So how often should you do it? Does redlining the engine damage it? Well, engines are designed with safety features. There is a rev limiter that will prevent the engine from going beyond what it was designed. So that is put in by the manufacturer to protect the engine. And as long long as the engine has been warmed up, the oil is at the correct grade, it's at the correct viscosity, so it needs to be at the correct temperature, you shouldn't do any additional harm to your engine by driving up to the red line. Now, the faster you drive the car and the harder you drive it, you are putting more strain on all of the components. So you are, to a certain extent, increasing the wear and tear on the engine than you would driving at much lower RPM figures. So you wouldn't want to do this excessively. Now, I can't really say that a red line a day keeps the mechanic away. I've heard that comment, and it's quite a nice comment. A lot of people swear by it, but it depends on your engine. If you've got a large V6 engine or a modern 1 litre turbocharged engine, they're going to have different demands. The 1 litre turbocharged engine is going to work fairly efficiently and effectively most of the time, so there's less need to give it that big extreme blowout. But we can still do the Italian tune-up not at the red line. Going over the sort of 2,000–3,000 RPM on most engines is sufficient to aid that cleaning process, to increase the velocity of those exhaust gases and to just keep everything inside the engine nice and clean. So the key really is to explore the full range of the RPM, not to be afraid of the red line. You might want to use the red line, for example, if you're overtaking, to keep the car in the power band on your next gear change. So modern engines are actually very well designed. There's not a lot we can do to them as a driver to damage them, but with a little bit of mechanical sympathy and just understanding the Turin Tuneup principles and what it does and how often to do it, we can keep our car in good condition. You wouldn't want to hold the car at the red line for prolonged periods of time. That's not going to do very much extra benefit in terms of cleaning. The Turin Tuneup just requires high RPM driving, not max RPM driving. So enjoy your car. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please boot the like button. That really does help us to get out there. I've lined this video up for you that should help you to get the best out of your car, and also this playlist. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so, because we'd love you to stay tuned. Thanks for watching. See you in this next video.